Pocket-sized RGB LED lights with special effects built in. Who really cares? There's tons on the market. I myself have reviewed several of them, and in a lot of ways they're pretty similar. There are little touches here and there that make them all stand apart from each other, but what I have here for you today is one from Pilotfly, and this actually is a company that makes gimbals, and they make pretty forward-thinking, really high-quality gimbals at that. I've loved them. My first gimbal ever was a Pilotfly gimbal, actually, and I'm really excited to see a light from them because it shows, I think, their ingenuity, their attention to detail. This is a pretty cool little light, and while in a lot of ways it is very similar to the others on the market, it also stands out in a few ways, and one in particular makes it really, really easy to use multiples of these together, either to get special effects or to get just more power for a small size light, and that is definitely going to stand out among the rest. So as I'm sweating like crazy in this incredibly humid room, let's get into it. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back, and if you haven't been here before, please do consider subscribing to get unboxings, reviews, tips and tricks, anything photography and videography related. Also head over to my Facebook page because I post a lot more kind of in-between reviews, behind the scenes type stuff, so you can see a lot of what I'm using and how I'm using it. So like I said, what we have here today is the AtomCUBE RX1 from Pilotfly, and we're just going to really jump right into this. We're going to show you what's included. I'm going to run through the menus and just show you how everything works on here, and we'll touch upon a couple of little special things that make this stand out along the way. And of course, at the end of this video, we will check out how the Bluetooth mesh works, which is what's really special about this. It's a system that allows you to control potentially hundreds of these at the same time from one device, either one by one or pairing them, grouping them together. I'm rambling, so let's get into it. So this is the box that you get it in, and it's a good looking box. It's pretty simple on all of the sides except for the front. You do get a little bit of information on the side here, but it's nothing that you can't see just by looking at the website. In the box, besides what I have here, you just have your warranty card and your instruction booklet. But what you do get here, of course, is the light itself, a charging cable, which is of course USB-C, a little bracket that you can screw into the side, but you can also remove it if you don't want it. And you are going to have a couple of options where you screw that in the side. Again, we'll take a look at the body in just a second. And you do also have a carry case, which is actually a little bit rigid in a good way. It will do a good job of protecting this light. Not that it's really going to need protecting. It's aircraft grade aluminum, I believe. It's really a solid light, so it's not going to need protecting, but it can be useful to have this. It has some little button flaps on the back, which would be great to slide through straps on the outside of your bag or on a belt loop if you want to carry this around with you. Of course, it has a little hook on the top here as well. And the sides here are elastic, so you can shove this cable inside together with the light itself, which is really great. It's not going to hold only the light and then you have to do something else with this. You can bring them both together in here because especially that elasticness allows you to have a little bit more freedom to fit more in here thickness wise. So on the front of the light, you have this kind of semi-clear plastic, which is covering the LED diodes to keep them protected, and it will give you a little bit of diffusion. It's not going to be enough to cut out that weird multiple shadow effect that you do get with LED lights. So if you do want to avoid that when you're cutting the light, if you're trying to block it off, for example, then you want to maybe put some more diffusion over this to avoid that. But in most cases, for such a small light, I don't think people are really going to care about that. On the top, you have this kind of curved design, which is kind of nice little touch. And the power button is actually recessed inside of here, which is really nice because you don't want to accidentally turn this on when it's inside your bag or inside your pocket. This actually does have a really great battery life of 3 hours on full power, but still, if you accidentally turn it on when it's in your bag and transporting it, it's going to be dead when you get on location. So you can power it while you are charging the battery. So if you do find yourself in a pinch, you can use this for longer than that 3 hour limit by just plugging it into a power bank or something like that. However, it's nice to see that they thought about that and did recess that power switch in there. On the corner there, you have the intensity dial, and this is actually a really nice little dial. It's not sticking out so much. Again, it's semi-recessed on the corner here, so that way you don't accidentally mess up your settings, and it has a good feel to it. When you power this on, you can see that you can go in 1% increments, and it has a really nice tactile feel to it when you're doing that you can have enough control where you can actually do that accurately. On the side here, we have your function dial / button, so you can push this in to jump between different parameters that you're adjusting, and then you can slide it up or down to adjust those parameters. And then below that, you have your mode button. So this will cycle through the different modes, your white light, your RGB, your special effects, just by pushing it. And under that, you have a recessed port for the USB-C. On the bottom, there's nothing. And then on the other side, we actually have 3 screw threads, which is really nice because most of these lights will only have 1/4 20 screw threads, but I actually do have some clamps or magic arm type mounting things that do have 3/8 inch screws. So having that 3/8 inch option here actually makes this feel a little bit more professional to me, just a little bit at a different level than some of the other ones here. So it's cool that they added both of those. And this is where you're going to be able to use this little mounting bracket. You can screw it into the bottom hole if you want to put something here, you know, a little ball head. You can screw right into this, or you can put it right up flush with the body if you just want to have it mounted like that. Of course, using this, you could adjust the angle a bit. It's not like a hands-free tilting arm like you can see on some other designs, but on this arm itself, there are several screw threads, so you know, you could really use this exactly how you wanted to. It gives you extra options without requiring you to keep it on or to use it in any one particular way. You might also be able to see that there are some little holes here. You have one in each corner, and that's going to be able to work together with a clamp that they have separately. I think it's sold separately. I'll show you in just a minute, or I'll put some B-roll over this, but you can actually use this little hole to kind of clamp on this little bracket that they have, and you can link 2 of these together and then mount them right in the center point, so that way you can have 2 of these together on a light stand, and potentially even more, I assume. But it's a really cool little touch that they put here. Of course, you can, you know, just loop a strap through here too if you wanted to carry this with you, but it works really nicely with that little clamp that they have available for it. Like I said, these are going to be even easier to use together with 2 or 3 or 4 of them to get more power for a key light or something like that and shoot it through some diffusion because of that Bluetooth mesh app. So it's really nice to see that they kind of built into the body physically an easy way to link multiple of these lights together as well. On the back, you have your HSI wheel, which will give you a kind of rough estimate of what number value some of these colors will have. So when you're dialing that in, you can do that a little bit quicker. And of course, your screen, which actually shows quite a lot of information on there. And we'll see that in just a minute as we power this on. One thing that I did notice, and you'll see right now as I power this on, is that it actually takes a few seconds to start up, and that's longer than most of these other lights. It's not going to be a big deal in most cases, but just be aware that it does take a few seconds to kind of kick in once you switch it on compared to other lights which just immediately come on when you press the power button. You'll see we start off in CCT mode. This is your white light mode, and you can go in 100-degree increments all the way down to 2,500 Kelvin and all the way up to 8,500 Kelvin. So I did a handful of tests at different color temperatures and also in RGB mode and everything with my Sekonic C800 color meter, and this is an awesome color meter, by the way. I will be doing a review of it soon, but there's really not a whole lot to report, and I mean that in a good way. The color temperatures reported on the back of the light are pretty accurate for the most part. Down below daylight temperature, they're more accurate than above, but up around 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 Kelvin, you're not going to see a whole lot of change with, you know, small differences in color temperature anyway. So I found that these were on average pretty much as accurate in terms of color temperature as the other lights that I've tested. Throughout the range, the CRI remains around 94 and 95 in my testing, and the other methods of testing color rendition are also very good. The R9 values for CRI, which are especially important for rendering skin tones, are also pretty good for the most part, although I did find that they took a slight dip down below what I would hope to see around daylight temperature. But at the lower end, they're pretty good, and at the higher end, they're actually really good. And overall, again, it's fairly average for something like this, especially considering this is not a dedicated white light LED. On the RGB side of things, the colors are very saturated when you want them to be, and the degree indications on the back LCD are pretty accurate for the most part. And even when you dial back the saturation, you can still go through a pretty wide range of colors, which again, some lights can suffer from as you dial that saturation back. You might kind of not get quite as smooth of a transition between different colors, but these seem to do pretty well in that regard as well. In terms of the actual power, the output, the brightness of these lights, you could of course read the specs on the website just as good as I could tell them to you, but I thought a better way to show that would just be to actually use them as a key light here in the same setup with the same camera settings that I have right now, which I'm using a much bigger light as a key light. So I'll put some diffusion in front of these. I have 2 of them connected together, and I will throw a sheet of diffusion in front of them as well. I'll turn them on and I'll see exactly how the power output is going to be in this type of setup. I actually don't know. I haven't done this yet, so it's going to be a surprise for me as well. Let's go ahead and see how much power these can put out. So this is actually using these 2 lights probably about an arm's distance from me without any diffusion, and they're on 100% power at 5,600 Kelvin, basically daylight color balance. And it seems like this is actually slightly overexposed compared to using the light that I was just using. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that diffusion on here, see if that cuts it down just to the perfect amount. So now I've gone and thrown the diffusion on there. I've actually used a couple of pens. I just gaff taped them onto the lights to give a little bit of distance from the lights themselves for that diffusion. And as you can see, it actually cut into the screen a little bit. So I moved it back probably about 6 inches just to be out of the frame here. It's just right on the edge of the frame right here, the edge of the diffusion paper. And again, this is still on 100% in 5600 Kelvin. So now we're just going to go and throw it into a lower color temperature and a higher color temperature. I'm not going to adjust the camera, but you can just see how that affects the actual exposure if it gets brighter or darker as I do that. This is now 2500 Kelvin. And now this is the other end of the spectrum at 8500 Kelvin. So it seems like a fairly steady output across the range. It may vary slightly, but I think it's steady enough to say that you're not going to be losing out so much by choosing one end of the range or the other end of the range or right in the middle. Also, as a quick side note, just checking this with the color checker now, when this is set at 5600 Kelvin daylight, which it is right now, the actual color temperature is more close to 5400 Kelvin, which is actually a little bit warmer than my main key light. So my camera right now is set to 5200 Kelvin. I don't think it'll make a significant difference, but if you can see that this is a little bit maybe of a warmer color as I switched to these as my key light, that's the reason why. There may also be a very slight magenta shift, so I have to double check my main key light to see what it was at before, but you may or may not see a slight difference when I switch between those in that case as well. Anyway, on the screen you can also see the blinking Bluetooth light, which means obviously we're not connected to Bluetooth right now. You can see your battery meter, and you have an intensity bar on the bottom here, not only a number but an actual bar. So you can see as I dial that down, it actually will come in at 5%, if I can do that right, there we go. It will come in at 5%, so it doesn't go down to 1%, but from 5% to 100, you can go in 1% increments. So you do have fine control over it, but you can't go down to 1, which honestly I don't think is necessary at all. Like this small, that will barely be any light whatsoever. So having from 5 to 100 is more than enough. And it's a very, like I said, smooth, nice tactile feel when you dial that intensity in with this dial on the top corner here. In this mode, actually pushing this function button doesn't do anything because there are no other parameters to jump to besides that color temperature, which this does control when you're in CCT mode. But if we press the set button, not the mode button, actually it's labeled set, this will jump into our next mode, which is HSI. And this is going to be one of your color modes. Again, another nice touch here is that on a lot of the pocket-sized LEDs that you have this RGB ability with, you can only see the parameter that you're currently adjusting labeled on screen. So for example, if I'm adjusting the hue, I can only see that on screen, or if I'm adjusting the saturation, I can only see that on screen. But here, you can see the hue, saturation, and intensity all displayed at the same time. So you can see that hue is highlighted right now. Dialing the function dial up or down will adjust our hue, and then pushing it in will highlight saturation. So you can adjust your saturation, and that will go down to 1%. And of course, the hue will also cycle around. So once you get up to 360, it will cycle back around to 0. So again, some of these lights are limited to stop at 360 and to stop at 0. And that means you have to dial all the way back through that if you want to go from one end to the other. But with this, you do not. It will continue through that, which just makes it a little bit easier to use. One other thing that I haven't seen in, I think, any of these little pocket-sized RGB LED lights so far is that when you press set once more, you actually get a manual RGB mode. So HSI, like I said, or like you just saw, will let you dial in the hue, the saturation, and then the intensity, but manual control will let you actually dial in the percentages for each of those 3 channels, the red, green, and blue channel. So you can see here red is at 0. If I dial that up, you can see the red light come in. And if I push the function button, it will switch over to green. I can dial that up, so mixing green and red makes this color here. And if I push it once more, I can dial in the blue percentage. So if you're more comfortable with those type of RGB settings, or if you want to match your settings on another light, for example, maybe this will be easier. But it's really great to see that they have both of these ways of controlling the RGB function built into this, which again is something that I haven't seen in any of the other pocket-sized lights like this. Pushing set once more will jump into your special effects, of course, and the way that they did this here is they have a few different categories, and within each of those categories they have a few different options. So here we have lightning, and you have mode A, which you can see is a typical lightning effect. If we go over to mode B, it's another pattern for typical lightning type effect. So you do have some variety of what you can get. You can't dial in the speed of these, but you can dial in the intensity. So at least you do have some level of control over this, other than just, choosing the effect by itself. Going on to mode C for lightning is more of a pulse. So this is definitely something that's going to be useful in some, special effects type situations. It's not like a super steady pulse, but it has a little bit of a pattern to it right there, you can see. But still, it's another option that is nice to have for some special effects. After lightning, we have our color cycle, and this will just, as it says, cycle through all of the colors. So here you can see full color. It will cycle through all of these colors in that color wheel. You can also go over to red, where it will kind of pulse red, basically. I don't know how clearly you can see that, but there we go, pulsing through the red here. And you can do party, which is another mode that a lot of these have that's, kind of fun. It might mimic DJ lights at a party, for example. So that's where it gets the party name from. And I wish that at least for this one you could dial in the speed, because that could help to match the scene a little bit more accurately. But you do have this mode as well built into here anyway. Pushing function once more, we have your police lights. And again, police lights are another thing that even my wife has said, like, the police lights are not this color in Japan. So it's nice when brands do think about adding in more modes of the police lights just to match different countries. So this is your blue red. You also have blue white, and then you do have red white, and you have blue red again. So I'm not exactly sure. I think Japan is only red, so the blue-white would be the closest. But again, it is nice at least to see that they didn't include only that one mode of police lights. They're thinking a little bit out of the box at least. Pressing once more, you can go over to fire. And so fire is another really fun one to have in these pocket-sized lights. It'll create some really fun effects. And you have one that is flame, and this seems to be like more maybe of a larger flame, maybe a fireplace or something. And if you go over to the other mode, it's candle, and this seems to have just a little bit more of a variation in intensity and color. A little bit more of that flicker that you'll see in a candle. Pushing our function button once more, we have television, and again here you can see TV 1 is a mode that kind of smoothly moves between a couple of different brightnesses, and actually it does change the color ever so slightly, because I think that's great. TV obviously changes colors too, and a lot of these lights that have that TV effect built in only change the intensity, so it's nice to see that it does seem to change the color just ever so slightly as well. TV 2 gives you a little bit more color. It gives you like more of a blue and green, so again, I think this is really more appropriate for a TV effect. I do wish that the transition wasn't quite so smooth though. I wish that it cut a little bit more roughly, because that might replicate, cutting between different scenes on TV a little bit more accurately. But again, it's nice to see that they do have some different options built in. It's really hot in here.
Alright, so just to quickly go through the app here, it's called AtomCUBE, and when you open it up for the first time, right now I have one of these lights connected, and I did delete the other one so I can show you how they get connected. But as long as you have your Bluetooth on, you can see that the one that is still connected just shows online by itself. You don't have to do anything else after you get it connected the first time, which is great. It's really, really easy to use. For a new device though, just click the plus up in the top corner, click Add Device, and it will scan for them. Once it shows up in the list, just click the plus next to it, and then once it says done, it means it's added to your list, so you can go back, and you can see now that I have both of these listed as connected. Down the bottom, you have 3 tabs. You have the devices, group, and settings. Settings really just shows you some of the information about your system, the version, everything like that. Devices is the page that we were on before, and group will allow you to control these in some different ways. So you can either choose all of them. Right now I only have 2, so technically all devices or some smaller group really doesn't make a difference. But if you have many of these, you can create separate groups. For example, if you have a key light group with 3 or 4 lights, and then you have a backlight group with another few lights, you can make separate groups for those, so you can control them all together but separately from each other, which makes it really, really easy to use these together as larger lights. Anyway, going back to the devices page, you can control them one by one just by clicking on the name. However, it doesn't seem like there's any way to rename them, so you're going to have to remember which is RX1, RX1, 2, and so on. If you have multiple of these lights, maybe you could throw a sticker, some gaff tape with the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or so on the light itself, so that way you could keep track of them. But it would be great to be able to rename these in the app. Anyway, today, so we can see the light changing itself and the screen in the back, we're going to go ahead and control this in a group, and you can create smaller groups. It's very simple to do. For example, if I click the plus here and do add group, obviously I only have 2 lights, but you can create the group name. Let's say A, B, C just for now. Click OK, and let me click OK again. So you can see that there are 2 tabs for contains and uncontains. So you can remove lights if you have too many in there, or you can add lights if you want to add more. So right now, go to the uncontains, and you can see my 2 lights listed there. Just check them if you want to add them into your group, and you can go back to the contains tab, and you can see that they're now contained in that group. Again, if you want to remove them, just uncheck them and it will remove them from the group, and that's how you go about doing that. Anyway, again, I only have 2, so I'm just going to go ahead and click all devices, and it'll bring you into the control page. In this control panel, you have 3 tabs up top and 3 tabs down the bottom. We're going to start off up top, and first off, we have our HSI, which is some of your color control, and you can have this kind of color wheel here that you can spin around, and this does not affect saturation. This will only affect the hue. You can see the number on the top as you scroll around, and I do wish that you could actually just maybe click on that and dial it in actually with the keyboard to get a little bit quicker accuracy if that's what you're looking for. But you can also choose from some preset colors down the bottom. Again, this would be a nice way to customize this. If you could customize this preset list down the bottom, maybe if you wanted to switch back and forth between a handful of colors, you could choose them in advance, preset them to this list down the bottom, and then switch back and forth really fast. That would add a little bit more functionality to this app as well. Under that, you have a slider, which is for the intensity, and you can go from 100% down to 5% is actually the lowest, but it actually does turn the light off. So it says 5%, but I guess it's technically 0%. But you can slide that around right there to control the intensity as well. The next tab is hue and saturation. So now it's very similar, but in this case, you can also slide in or out from the center of that color wheel to get this more or less saturated. And you can still go around to choose the different colors. Again, I would really love to be able to just click on these numbers for hue and saturation to be able to dial them in accurately and quickly with a keyboard, but that's not here. Again, maybe it's something they will add in the future, but again, it's otherwise pretty straightforward to use. And once again, you have the intensity dial on the bottom. Next up, we have CCT, and that is your white light color control. So again, you can have the similar wheel here with the color. You can swing around it, and once again, I just wish that you could tap on the number and dial it in with a keyboard, but they do have, again, some presets on the bottom, some maybe more useful presets: 2500K, 32, 45, 56, 65, 7000, and 8500K, and once again, the dial on the bottom for intensity. When you're in this group control, and keep in mind I am in the group control right now controlling all lights, you can click on those 3 dots on the top, and you can also modify the group name, edit the group, and that's to remove or add lights to the group, or you can delete that group right from here. Now going on to the next tab at the bottom, you can go to Scene, and this is pretty much all of the different scene modes, the special effects modes that are built into the light, although there actually are a couple that are not included in here that you can access from the light directly, but you do get most of them. You get your Flash A, which is your lightning, you got Flash B, which is a different lightning pattern, you have Flash C, which is more of a kind of hum, I guess you could say a gentle hum of the light with a little bit of an irregular pattern to it. You got full color cycle, you've got your red color cycle, you've got your party mode, of course, and keep in mind that you can't control any of the aspects here through the app either. So while on the light itself, you can at least control the intensity of these effects. You cannot control the intensity through the app. So once again, that's something that I think they could really benefit from adding into the app in the future. Then you've got your blue-red police car lights, you've got your blue-white, and your red-white. You have TVA again on the light itself. There are 2 TV modes. You don't get that here, but you do get your flame A and your candle A. So this is a very simple interface, but I do think they could, I guess you could say, complicate it more by adding a little bit more control into the app, even just to match what you have on the light itself. Finally, you have your music tab, and this is a very interesting one. So this will allow you to kind of customize that party type effect. It's a very similar effect to the party type effect where it's going to have flashing colored lights, but you can actually customize it to music specifically. Now, in theory, that sounds really cool, but I actually don't see that significant of a customization. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but we're going to show you here, and I will also put on screen the steps to add music into this. It's not as simple as importing music from your phone. If you have music on your iTunes account on your phone, it's going to be a little bit different than that. If you have Spotify or something like that, it's not integrated with that. I wish it was. That would add, again, to the functionality, but I will put the steps up on screen, and keep in mind that you do have to use MP3 files to get them to sync into this app here. Anyway, down at the bottom, you can see, your controls for playing and pausing the music and what mode it's in. So if you tap this little icon on the bottom right, that looks like a bunch of lines, you can actually switch this to visual mode. And you can see on the screen that it says speak, sing, or play music, and the device will follow your voice with colorful lighting, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So you can see now as I'm talking, ideally, these are supposed to be kind of following my voice. I don't know. Does it look like they're following my voice? If I go boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka. I don't know. Maybe it kind of follows the tempo of the music a bit, but let's stop that and let's go back to music mode. So you can click here to play the music, and this is actually my old band from when I was in college. But let's put the volume up a little bit more so you can hear it. I don't know. Does that really match the music or not? Maybe it's not bad, and it is cool. It's a fun thing to play with, and maybe again they will develop it a little bit more in the future. But if you tap off of that screen, you can see that when you play this, you can also have a few different modes. Again, they have normal, rock, colorful, dream, and less color. I did mess around with these, and I would show you, but I think it's a waste of time because I honestly, again, didn't see that significant of a difference. One more thing I did want to note, going back to the scene mode, is that things like the lightning, for example, I have two lights synced now, and they do flash in sync with each other. So if you're controlling this in a group and using these special effects, you don't have to worry about things like the lightning effect being out of sync with each other. They do flash together in perfect timing. But with something like the party now, you might not be able to see this because I have one of the lights facing a different way, but the two lights are kind of out of sync, but I think it's on purpose because the lights kind of flow from one side to the other. So I think that's on purpose, and especially because things like the lightning do flash in sync, I don't think it's a mistake. So overall, I think that this app could still be improved. I think they just need to kind of add a little bit more functionality into it, a little bit more control maybe in some cases. But overall, it's easy to use, and I mean, it works. When you open the app up, as long as you have the lights on, they connect. It's just super simple and easy to use. You don't have to go through any syncing process each time you use it. And it is very responsive. Again, keep in mind that this is a kind of mesh network, they say. So you're going to be able to connect to lights further away because they will communicate with each other. So as long as you have one light, I believe it's within 10 meters of you, then you can control other lights further away because it will kind of piggyback on that first light.
So hopefully throughout this, you could see that they did a really good job of making this just a really versatile light in terms of how you can use it. They really maximized the potential of the features that they built in here. They have that Bluetooth mesh, which makes it easy to control multiples of these lights at the same time. So they also made the physical body a little bit easier to link multiple of these together and get, maybe a more powerful key light in a package that you can literally put into your pocket. They also have two modes of control for RGB mode, and you see a lot more information on screen than some of the other lights. You do also get a pretty decent variety for the special effects, so it's going to be a fun light to use and a useful light to have in your kit for pretty much any type of shoot. So if you have any questions or comments, do be sure to let me know down below, and I will do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, if you like this video or find it helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, share it if you'd like, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for watching.